This is Betsy Jensen, and you are listening to Unstoppable Body and Mind, episode 77, The Pain Habit, interview with Drew Coverdale. In this podcast, we learn to upgrade our brain and understand the power of our thoughts, to heal and to create the results we want in our life. Become the person in control of your healing and make peace with your life. Become unstoppable, body and mind. Hello, my loves. Today, I am pleased to bring you an interview I have with Drew Coverdale. He's a physiotherapist, physical therapist, basically in England, and he wrote a book called The Pain Habit, and I'm just going to let you listen in on our conversation. Basically, I found out about you, Drew, through one of my clients. She read your book, and it really helped her belief. She changed her perspective. From one week that I talked to her till the next, she really had a lot of insight from your book. So I listened to books. As soon as I started listening to it, it was probably within the first 15 minutes that I really loved how you explained things, especially The Pain Habit, as the book is titled. And I thought, I just reached out to you right in that moment and said, I want to have you on my podcast.
Oh, well, I'm grateful that you have. And I suppose in this field, we're always on the lookout, aren't we, for others doing similar fields, because it can feel a little bit lonely when you're saying strange things to patients and maybe to colleagues. So I've followed a bit your content and some of maybe colleagues we haven't met, but, you can see who's in the field and working. And it's nice to see their take on different messages. Yeah,
it's true. It's like I think you said singing from the same songbook.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. I think when you make a shift, and I don't know your history exactly, but I think you're 20 plus.
20 years as a physical therapist, and you're the same.
24, yeah.
24.
And it was probably about year 20 that I kind of started to understand things a little differently. Mm-hmm. We'd always physiotherapy, physical therapy, it works generally, independent of what exactly that you do. I realized it wasn't the techniques I was using. Often it was the patient when they're ready to get better and follow a certain protocol, and you're involved along the way in the recover. But there was always those subsection of patients that had the similar problems, similar findings. You did the same things and they didn't quite respond. And I used to think it was my fault.
Yeah.
Something I'd done. Over a little period, I thought it was the patient's fault.
Yeah.
And then neither of those positions are a comfortable position, and neither position's true. Right. Everyone's doing the best, but we're looking very singularly at their problem. They have a pain, they present it to somebody who knows a little bit about pain, but the patient doesn't know what they're complaining of. Yeah. They have a concept of what they're complaining of, but they're only interpreting that pain with what they understand. Yeah. And the person who's listening to that story is only interpreting the pain from what they understand. Now, they might both have lots of information and lots of qualifications, but it isn't about intellect, this. It's more about intuition. And I learned more through intuition and watching other people who are intuitive to realize I could shift my intelligence to one side for a little while, because it can get in the way of recovery.
That is fascinating. So you started learning through your own intuition, shifting your kind of cognitive left brain to the side a little, and started seeing these patients a little differently.
Yeah, the tipping point was somebody had told me about a talking technique for helping someone with pain. It's actually called Old Pain to Go, and it's a guy called Stephen Blake. Old Pain to go. It's a quirky name, and I'd heard about it, but it's something that it's not in the academic field. It's not in the training regimes that you or I would come across, a traditional kind of university and CPD, but I'd heard about it. I thought, somebody told me quite enthusiastically that you talk to someone and help someone with chronic pain, and almost turned it off. And I thought, I'm not having that. Not accepting it. My ego was, well, I've got all these qualifications and I can't help those people, so I'm not really up for that. So I left it. I dismissed it. A few months later, a patient in my clinic waiting room, and we were small talking as waiting to see one of my colleagues, mentioned the same person. And have you heard of this, Drew? It's old pain to go. And I said, no, but if you hear two things from different sides of the universe, you've got to act.
Yeah.
And so that night I booked on the course and went and watched this gentleman. He was only about 40 minutes away, and the room was filled with talking therapists, some kind of mental health nurse counselors, Reiki, a field that's not kind of one I knew much about, talking therapy. We talk in physiotherapy, but it's the starting point is you're looking to do something physical, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what a lot of patients expect, I think. If they come and you start talking to them and, start talking about their pain might be from something else, I've had some patients not like that. You have to go with your intuition, I think, on that.
Yeah. So my part of me said, don't go, don't be in there. It's not for me. And I watched this technique. It's a fascinating technique. And someone who had fibromyalgia, kind of, this Stephen Blake did this talking technique. It's really quite quick. And she said, my pain's gone. And I thought, I can't understand how that's possible. And then they brought volunteers into the room, and 10 people in the course, and maybe 8 left with no pain. And everybody in the room got an opportunity to have a go. Now, it didn't work with me. Now I thought, is it me?
Pain? Did you have pain to start?
No. Each participant had a subject.
I see.
Yeah, and each participant did this kind of script and this technique, and 8 people left without pain. And I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean? There's no pain?" It was fascinating, really. So I went to watch the same training twice, 2 more times with a couple of other trainers. So you almost triangulate the information. Mm-hmm. And it was delivered by a mental health nurse who did the same content, and then somebody else, different training, delivered the same content, and the results were the same, but it's not backed by any science or any evidence at the moment. But it was from like an NLP hypnotherapy background, like that kind of derivatives, quite short technique, but with no trance. Anyway, it fascinated me, and I came home and I kind of thought about it a lot, really, and started using it in clinic when I had nothing to lose. So patients would come with one thing and say, actually, you can help me with my recent ankle injury, but I've got a back pain from 10 years ago that you probably won't be able to help me with. So I'd start to say, well, incidentally, there is something we can have a look at if you're interested. Anyway, this technique started to work. And I thought, how does it work? How does, within 5 minutes, turn pain off that's been there like 10 years?
Yeah.
Crazy. So I approached Lorimer Mosley.
You did?
Yeah, I got up in the middle. I just wrote an email as a small town physio in England, in a little private practice after 20 years doing his stuff. I said, listen, I'm not a pain physio. I said, I'm seeing this thing and it's a bit strange, but I bounced it. I said, I don't know you, but I'm telling you what I've seen and it's weird. And he emailed me back and he said, it's I get 100 of these emails a month of wonder cures. He said the only thing
not just old pain,
anything, anything,
any of the just
the stuff, pain turned off. Stuff. Pain turned off, or try this and this works, Mr. Mosley, and blah blah blah. Yeah. And so he said, really, you'd need a randomized controlled trial. It'll only ever get. It's seen as a guru-led thing. It's a bit wacky. It's, well, to me, it didn't make much difference either way. I was just kind of come across something. It intrigued me. Pass it to someone who maybe knows. But I thought, why not go for the top? And he said, I'm really sorry to kind of pour water on your idea after you took the effort to write this email. I said to him, listen, I've just had an email from the most eminent professional in my field. I said, I'm buzzing. I'm buzzing. Yeah. I said, thank you, and I'm grateful for the information. So I then contacted a local university who I've taught with, and a gentleman called Professor Cormac Ryan. Mm-hmm. He's head of the UK kind of Physiotherapy Pain Association. So he's another big player, and I'd taken some videos of these patients that were getting these results, and I contacted him and said, can you have a look at these videos? And he said, yeah, what is it you're doing? I said, I'm just talking to them. he said, what the hell are you saying to them?
Yeah. So yeah, you're not like educating them on pain,
No,
right? You're
no,
going
no,
in.
no, no, nothing, no traditional. There's a reframe to it.
Okay.
So that technique was fascinating. Anyway, we have gone on to do some research with it, done a pilot study, and we just putting a bid in, just gone last month for £250,000 for a local trust and the university to collaborate on it. Well,
Yes.
that'll go where it goes. But through that process, it fascinated me why it could work and then why it didn't work. It's fascinating that anyone can change so quick, and it's a bit like an epiphany
Yeah.
where someone's life is so fixed in one direction, their friend maybe dies of A, B, or C, and in that moment, the person says, "I'm changing my life."
Yeah.
And so something's happening in that process, but then others it wouldn't work, and they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to kind of make those breakthroughs. So it fascinated me once how it could work and once how it
Yeah.
couldn't. So I recognized it was there's a short game to recovery that's very rare and epiphany like, but fascinating if there's a procedure for it. But then there's got to be I noticed some people would get in touch 6 months later and said, "Can't believe it, it's gone." That I kept on saying what you told me,
Yeah.
talking around it, maybe the kind of broader aspects of pain education things, and it would go. So I recognize there's a behavioral change, either one that's immediate or one that's
Yeah.
kind of gradual. And I thought, what is it is happening with the behaviors of those people? So then I looked at the background to the book, I suppose, and I had my own experience of pain that I probably learned a lot from that. And it was from that I almost de-engineered it a little bit, or so I think I have, to look at the behavior science, the physio science I kind of knew, but didn't understand the behavior science.
Yeah.
Neuroscience I was kind of a well versed in, I suppose, but we can always learn a little bit more, and psychology as well. So I just felt as a physio I was really well positioned to pull in that together
Yeah.
and write about it in a way that means that change is possible for persistent pain. It doesn't matter how long it takes. If you're ready to take the steps, then you start taking them. And if your change is immediate, great, which is kind of book curie, one conversation, all pain to go, hypnosis. So you're breaking the pattern. And what fascinates me about this is that the pain itself is simply a representation of habitual behaviors. And they can change in a
Yes.
moment, over months, or never.
Right. Okay. And that was so interesting how you had described it as a habit. And so that I was interested in having you describe kind of like how you do in your book about how pain is a habit. But I have one question quickly first. In your experience, what percentage would you say are the people, just roughly ballpark, how many people tend to just have that immediate, quick transition versus the slower?
Well, I suppose you'd have to do a study on it, wouldn't you? But anecdotally,
Yeah, it's a
uh,
small sample size. I
small
get it.
sample,
I'm just
small
so curious.
sample size. Yeah, in the last year. So if I've did it 100 times, I'd probably say about five,
Okay.
five where the pain switches off, and it doesn't matter the timeline. 20 years, it could be get
Yeah.
up and be pain free without doing any technique.
Uh-huh.
Simply explaining the concept without doing a technique. As
Okay.
soon and I think those patients, as a subsection, have a belief that they have a structural element that's the defining reason for them to be in pain. And once you shatter that belief,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or you deconstruct it in front of their eyes and say, actually, that degenerate disc exists in lots of people, like you know, Betsy, and
Right.
the only structural reasons for persistent pain is cancer and autoimmune disease and undiagnosed fracture and ongoing infection. And you don't have one of them,
Yeah.
otherwise you've been a long time dead.
Yeah.
It defines that your pain is driven by a stress response, probably linked to around the time you start to develop the pain. And if they say, "What you mean I'm not damaged?" I said, "Well, you are, but you don't need the pain to prove it."
Yeah.
And
Amazing. Well, I
I,
think that helps because sometimes I get from a lot of my clients, like they hear those stories of people that have that rapid transformation
and they feel like something's wrong with them if they're not able to achieve it that quickly. Maybe there is something structural that's causing mine because I didn't have that experience. But knowing that it's, even if we just are just highly extrapolating, but like, maybe 5% or 5 out of 100, it's good to know that it's not like the majority of people, 50% or more. I mean, I didn't even know what to expect from your answer. So that helps me.
Yeah. And I think that the two biggest emotions that stop people, fear is a big one. So fear is the main one, and that goes really quickly. The pain can go quick. It doesn't mean that there's still not a period of conditioning to be done for that person, or the part of the body they've been protecting for so long and for so many years. The target of where they want to get to has to be scaled up gradually. Now, the alternate emotion, and the one that's been intertwined with it a lot, is frustration. Now, both trigger the stress response.
Yeah, tell me more about frustration too. I've learned a lot about pain and fear, but frustration.
Yeah, so see the brain as triggering pain in one of four ways. Well, I see this and explain to the patient. So water and food are very two simple categories that the brain will trigger pain if there's a threat to the organism due to the reduction in both of those things.
Yeah.
So if you or I didn't drink water for the rest of the day, we'd have a series of warnings that would go up, and you'd eventually have some sort of discomfort, probably a headache, if that's the association I recall. Think, it's not damage. It's my brain's got to that point where it's saying any more than this, and it's organ failure and death. Yeah. So we really need you to kind of look after yourself in terms of drinking water, and we'll turn this off. And that's what happens. We don't conceptualize it like that, but that's what's happening. Right. With food, it's the same scale. You can last longer without food, but it's organ failure and death to the organism. Yeah. And you might feel stomach pain. Those associations are pretty easy to understand. Right. The physical element is if you put your hand on something hot, you pull your hand away, you could leave it on as long as you want, and the sensation will get much, much stronger until it's unbearable, and you take your fingers away and you won't have any damage. Yeah. So there's damage, no damage with any of those, all protection. But culturally, what we tend to miss, especially in the Western society, especially in the UK system, and probably lots of other similar ones, is we miss the regulation of our body that's monitoring the stress chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline. And it means that if you live in quite a high octane life, or a busy life, or a stressful life, whether one you enjoy or you don't, you're quite close to the tipping point.
I see. Yeah. Your
default starting point is busyness. And that might link to the traits from childhood, or like traits of the successful things that they bring, or the unsuccessful things they bring. It keeps someone quite close to the top.
Yes.
So it means that the tipping point for the organism to trigger pain from overload is closer in those people. And anything that's stressful, good or bad, can trigger it. So people will say, well, I'm not stressed. It's just that's their normal, but they're so close to it. So when trauma happens in these people, and quite often they need a really big down button. So if they work hard, they've got to play hard. If pain comes in this moment and stops the person doing the things they love, and they believe that pain is something due to something structural, then they're frustrated they can't do that thing, or they may fear the thing that's happened to them and it's stopping them doing it. Now that fear adds to the stress chemicals.
Yes.
And this point of focus to find how do I get out of this situation means that they have to understand the pain. They have to understand the true meaning of the pain. But if all they get back from that pain is uncertainty, lack of information, and loss of control, they define those three things that define the stress response.
Yeah.
As soon as they feel stressed, as they focus on it, it triggers the stress chemicals that drives the pain that they. So fear, frustration, anger, resentment, regret, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
You'll often find that's the emotion that was present at the time the person started to feel pain.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So whichever one was the dominant.
Possibly, yeah. That's the one that I'm still holding on to. That's the one that might reflect in the in how they describe their pain. I'm so frustrated about it, because when you explain pain to those patients and their experience, they say, well, I know I'm not damaged. I know, and I've done all those things and I'm still not getting better. And I don't know what it is that's keeping me stuck. And I'll say, can you hear your frustration? Because that's what I'm sensing.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes they'll even see that they're frustrated. They'll be frustrated that they're frustrated, right?
Right.
So yeah, what do you do with them?
So the first part of any recovery is awareness.
Yeah.
You
So
shine a light back on them, because this isn't about blame. Remember, these behaviors, Betsy, are invisible to them. And people think invisible, but they are. And if I said to you, I don't know your parents, but there'll be some of your traits, and people have said to you, Betsy, you're just like your mum, auntie, cousin, sister. And you say, I am nothing like them.
Right.
And your friends might look and think, oh my gosh, she doesn't even see it.
Right.
So
can happen.
We always have these hidden behaviors, but when they've been personality traits, we think they are either genetic, or we think we identify them as something we were born with. We weren't. These are often coping strategies for pushing hard in those early years. And we all have our default mechanism for dealing with stress.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that it's encoded in childhood as something that takes you towards safety. Right? So if you were called names, or I was called names as a child by once or 1,000 times, it doesn't really matter. But in that moment, we do something to feel better. Yeah, we do something. And as we feel better, I'll prove it to you. I'm not that person you're telling me I am. I feel temporarily better and a sense of control of the moment. Now, and all of us have had maybe one situation in childhood, and if we have happy childhood, then that's great. But that connection is made in everybody. But if a child's had lots of stress, lots of experience, lots of adverse childhood experiences, and there's a list of some awful ones, but then they have to repeat that behavior so much it becomes their normal. And then they carry that into adulthood and don't even see that they've got those traits. It might bring them their finance, it might bring them all their success, it might bring them relationships, but it's so driven that it's a very fragile existence, that if they identify with those things and those behaviors, if they lose those behaviors, that's such a threat to the organism.
It's been their safety. That's how they've coped.
Yeah. But if pain comes from overusing any one of these default behaviors, any one of them, and that can end up being, the comforting things are always dopamine based, chocolate, food, salt, sugar, pleasure, quick pleasure, gambling, work, sense of achievement, sport, achieving sport. What else I mentioned? Sex, gambling, shopping. Any human behavior can be addictive if you listen to some of Gabor Mate's work. So it's all transient pleasure. And if that's the default behavior that someone has to use during a very stressful time in their life, the organism recognizes that that's too stressful. It's too full of these stressful chemicals. So it defaults to use pain to distract that person. And the pain will appear in the system that's been overloaded through its use. Could be the musculoskeletal system. Someone doing for others, working too hard, pushing too hard to get relief from the emotion, the feeling about the situation, or it comes in the system that is being neglected. And that could be any system of the body. It could be the digestive system, it could be the cardiovascular system, it could be the immune system, it could be the kind of thinking brain system, because all of those systems, when you're being chased by a lion, well, they're all, apart from the flush of inflammatory chemicals that come with the chase, those systems are shut down relatively. And that's fine to escape the lion, absolutely fine. But we shouldn't be chasing the lion every day and every night and every day and every night.
Not everything's a lion.
Exactly.
But sometimes we start to, especially being in fear and fear of the pain, and that leading to catastrophizing, everything becomes like fight or flight and survival, and creates those same hormones, right? Like as if we're being chased by a lion.
Yeah, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
the person can be made to think that they're to blame. And that's not true at all. It's not true at all. It's these patterns are wired in the unconscious part of the brain.
Yeah.
They start off as an impulse. So if you had some chocolate for the very first time, you'd feel an impulse. You don't have to tell yourself that's exciting. It's exciting straight away if you like chocolate or whatever your thing was.
Yeah.
But after a while, if I give you 10 bars of chocolate, so it felt routine, it's wired in a different part of your brain. It's the routine section. Now, when dopamine's released, that's the sense of pleasure if it's an impulse. But once it's in the routine section, dopamine's still released, but it doesn't trigger pleasure. It triggers a compulsion to repeat the behavior just to keep it going. So the fascinating part when someone feels stressed, I am stressed about A, B, C, D, and E, is that dopamine is released in that part of the brain to produce the quickest behavior possible, encoded for that person since whenever, to overcome the stress response. And that's the behavior that triggers the stress.
And that triggers more stress.
So that could be somebody who doesn't want to eat chocolate. I'm so sick of my body and the size I am. I really hate myself. I looked in the mirror. They feel stressed. Well, they're probably addicted to chocolate in the first place. So what do they feel compelled to do?
Eat chocolate.
So mine was work or mine was exercise. I was a professional footballer. So I was driven for years and years becoming that. And then when that ended, I become pretty much obsessed becoming a physio. And do my best at it. And I am what I am. But I realize now I don't have to follow the compulsion. I can do what I want when I want. And now I've learned strategies that make me feel good about myself and help patients make them feel good about themselves, so they're less compelled to use their default behavior. It doesn't matter what that behavior is. And as soon as they start to do it and know that they're not broken, the pain can go just like that. It is crazy when it happens.
So you're not necessarily trying to get them to focus on their pain or changing anything with their pain. How would you explain it? Focusing on the default behavior.
So there's 4 components to it. Think, breathe, move, and feel. Do you have children, Betsy?
I do. I have 4.
4. I have 4 too.
Yeah.
And so this is a common experience halfway around the world from each other. A child will come to you, let's say they're 3 or 4, little child, and they come to you with an injury, a small injury that you're not too concerned about. A bust nose, a split lip, a grazed knee. And so they're thinking that they're going to die. Or they've no idea what this means in the blood, and they're thinking very catastrophic things. They're breathing very in a sympathetic nervous system heightened state. They are very guarded with my arm, mummy, my arm, and they're feeling pain. Fear and pain. Think, breathe, move, feel. So what do you do intuitively? You look at him, her close in the eyes. You're going to be okay. Mommy's going to help you get better. You're going to be okay, because you truly believe it. You truly believe it, and you are the truth to that child. You've told them a few lies that they deeply believe. Santa Claus, the tooth fairy, the man in the moon, it's the truth to them. They have no conscious thinking to question it. So you tell them the truth and you believe it. Then you challenge each of the beliefs that might pop up. Yes, mommy, but what about the blood? The blood's to clean the wound, darling. It has to bleed, it has to bleed a little bit, then we'll stop the bleeding. But it stings. Well, you've took the skin off and you ran too fast on the playground, so pick your feet up. That's the lesson we have to learn from that. You're going to be okay. What will happen? They ask you about the future. Well, Mummy cut herself yesterday. Look, I'm okay. And I've got a scar when I was your age and I fell on the playground. I'm okay. You give them the future. Take a deep breath, darling. Take a deep breath for Mummy. Breathe with Mummy. I don't want to move. Now she has to trust you, remember, or he has to. So you set a really small boundary. Just a little bit. Move a little bit for Mummy. Just a little bit. They have to take the step. Look for it, and the pain's not the same. They feel different. Now, you still have to take them from off your knee to back where the injury happened. Come on, back to your friends. You might want to cuddle them a bit longer, but you're not doing them any good. Get back on the bike, back to your friends. Come on, I'll watch. Off you go. Sometimes you have to be firm. Go on, you can do it. You watch them. I mean, go on. Take a deep breath. Move it a little bit. You mix and match. You're going to be okay. Think, breathe, move, feel. It's intuitive. You don't think what you're going to say. You just say it. And how much pain do they have 5 minutes later?
Probably forgotten about it.
Right. So it's a perfect example that if you're a human, you've had that human experience and you've had damage without pain, and you can see what the 4 components that you used without ever being taught at school. These are lessons before school. They're actually, you just have to start to apply again. Now, I've got to be the one that has the belief. I really believe they can do it, because my experience is that they can.
Yeah.
And they have to trust me.
Yeah.
And they may not. What I say sounds quite different, and they might push back at me, and that's okay. That's okay. You've got to try and find a way in. If you can't find the thought process, teach them how to breathe.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. With the think, there's a specific way of thinking here, right? Like, you're not wanting them to just overthink, and you're not wanting, what is the thinking part of it? How would you describe that?
Well, if it's fear-based that they're damaged, yes, they are, but that shouldn't cause persistent pain. And there's no proof of that. Yeah, if it's fear that's a damaged disc, it's fear that's it's arthritis, it's fear. Yes, those elements can cause pain, but they're amplified, and it persists because of the emotions that are maintained. They change the emotions around it, one being fear and 2, frustration. The other ones will fall away anyway. And so if you can give them a moment to challenge their own beliefs, and if they're not ready for that, say, okay, well, that's fine. Just park it for a little while and then come with me. Yeah, you might get them to breathe for 2 minutes. Remember, the buy-in to this is tiny, because they are so driven. The brain, often in this section of patients, is so addicted to the stress response unconsciously, that in the moment of fear, or in a moment where you're saying to the unconscious mind, you're going to take away that protection, it'll do anything it can to maintain its sense of safety. So sometimes you need to leave the thinking and say, right, just breathe. So that, I don't know if you're familiar with the heart math. It's 2 minutes in, 2 minutes out, in through your nose, out through your nose.
Okay. Heart math. I've heard of it.
Yeah. Heart math breathing technique.
Is that your favorite? There's so many breathing techniques.
So many. The principle, Betsy, is that the breath out is longer than the breath in.
And that helps engage the parasympathetic state, right?
Yes, that's it. That can be a physiological sigh. If I've been sobbing, and if I've been sobbing and I went, it's that physiological sigh is that's another one from Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist. So there's lots of research around that. But essentially, it's the out breath is longer than the in. And you could do 4 square breathing. I like 5 in, 5 out. Yeah. I just think it's 6 breaths a minute. If you think the parasympathetic is maybe well, if you or I were doing sport, or we were frightened, or in a fight in somewhere, it'd be fast. Right. At work, or me and you now, it's probably about 12 to 15 breaths a minute. We're not wired. Probably a little bit tuned into what we're talking about, and maybe a little excited. I love this stuff. Wife's bored of listening to it. But a bit wired. But the breath rate below that is 6 breaths a minute. And now that's the mechanism that people don't tap into in pain, because they go to sleep in pain, they wake up in pain. They worry about tomorrow, they regret it ever happened. So that mechanism of before and after, that's the kind of mechanism that occurs at the point of trauma, injury, overload. So when we should be recovering with care, love, attention, boundary setting, all from ourselves. If we don't know those skills, if you've never been taught those skills, if you just never experienced them, or saw them, or parents who never used them, or theirs was kind of chin up, jog on. I shouldn't show my pain or my emotion, I better crack on despite it. So you've got an organism that's in fight or flight, and you've got the person using a stress response to cure the stress response. It'll never happen.
Yeah.
Chocolate will only make you feel good after the divorce. For the time you're eating the chocolate, you'll still be divorced the next morning and need 2 bars of chocolate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
2 pints of lager, or another spliff, or another hard day at work, or another run.
Right.
You often find, or I find in clinic, a patient said to me once, she said, I've just started running. And I said, how often have you been running? She said, every day. I said, how long for? She said, as long as I can. I said, what are you running from?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think because, yeah, sometimes people, it almost feels like part of them to be this achiever, to do well at work, to, have this system in place for themselves. And yeah.
It is so counterintuitive
Yeah.
to ask them to go slow, because their
Yeah.
mind's off the thing driving them. And they're because it's habitual, all they need is the cue. They just need the phone call from the granny and they're away. They need a phone call. They need to hear about work and they're at it. They need to see the chocolate, they eat it.
Yeah.
They need to see the trainers and feel frustrated they can't go. It's
Their
just,
brain's on the lookout for it, I'm sure, right?
Exactly.
Your reticular activating system is going to be trying to find these things to back up what you believe.
Of course. So belief underpins all of the behaviors. When the belief is really strong that it's a damage-based basis for the pain, a name, a structure, they've had it for so long, culturally it's accepted, it means that they feel stuck. The fear becomes subconscious, the frustration becomes generally subconscious, and the fears and frustrations pop up occasionally. They'll feel so frustrated, they'll smash the barrier. They won't feel any pain during the event. They're full of adrenaline. You could run away from a lion with a broken leg.
Yeah.
If we were in the same room and a lion came in, you could pick me up, throw me in front of the lion. You jump over the lion, run through the front glass door without opening it. You get across the road and you wouldn't have any pain.
Right.
So they get through the event either because they really want to do it and they enjoy it, or they really just kind of endure it. Once the event's over, you'll find they have the pain again, back in its same place or even lower. The threshold, even lower in terms of threshold, so the pain's more.
Threshold, yeah.
Lower threshold. And so when you're asking these patients to buy into this with a thought, a breathing pattern, a movement, or an emotion, you can use any of those categories, and that more or less covers all of the treatment approaches for persistent pain. But the buy-in is you're asking them to create a habit of a non-destructive behavior. A habit for a non-destructive behavior. So breathing quite slowly isn't very exciting. You don't get the immediate hit that you would if you sprinted.
Yeah.
But their default for feeling better about themselves is to hit themselves hard. What for? Pretty much everything in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're teaching them that what if I do this small breathing technique, this small movement, this small thoughts, this small emotional expression, it's going to help. Well, yeah. Well, if I do it every hour, will it help more? You have to.
Right. Can I be perfect at it? How can I overachieve at being the best?
You shine that back and say, can you see what you're asking me? I say my favorite question from a patient when I say this is, how often can I do it? Less. Right. Less is more. So you attach the behavior, the new behavior, whether it's a thought, whether it's a really small movement, and as a physical therapist, physio, you can say, well, this is safe. And if they're not sure it's safe, it's because they're so scared. I say to them, if 100 people did this task, from 8-year-old to 80, who'd be damaged by it?
Damaged by it, yeah.
And there wouldn't be. Who'd feel pain? Well, someone who's had an injury within 3 months, so that makes sense. Yeah. And the only other person to feel pain would be someone who's primed. They believe that movement is moving an area of their body that's already threatened. Yeah. So subconsciously, they don't even have to think. They can predictively anticipate moving a chair that's going to hurt the back.
Yeah.
So you have to show them that, put them in the safest place first to have those thoughts, have that breathing technique, have a movement that you might guide them with, that they can feel safe with, or that they can kind of be comfortable feeling the motion. And you attach that to a cue. So it might be running the bath, for example, or flipping the kettle.
So something they're already doing I was thinking maybe the cue would be pain, but.
Yeah, the cue can be the pain.
Okay.
If someone is when someone has pain, that is a cue for automatic behavior.
Yeah.
When someone's feeling the pain, if it was me, let's say it's my neck pain, and I'm chatting to you, and I quickly go, oh, my neck, it's gone again, Betsy, it's gone. It's my disc, it's spasming, it's trapped my nerve, it's down my arm, it's going down my arm. I'm not going to be able to work tomorrow. Oh my God, it's killing me. Or I'll have to phone Barbara. I'll say I can't do this for it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I've got to get the shopping. I'll have to go anywhere. It's killing me. I've gone.
Yep. Yeah.
I've gone.
Right.
That was all automated, made up. I don't have those behaviors or traits. But that's what happens.
It would feel so believable to someone like reality, like they wouldn't even know that it's a habit.
They'll act in the same way. They'll say the same words.
Yeah.
They'll say my back pain comes on in the winter, or it's worse every Tuesday, or it's because of my genes. They're all just behaviors.
Yeah.
So much so that if the weather was bad and that person hadn't said a word, they've said it that many times. When someone else comes in the room and say, how's your back? It's snowing outside. I bet your back's bad. It's reinforced by family, friends, culture. So you can see how hard it is for some people to break that.
Yeah. So when they have the cue, what do they do?
So the cue is, let's say cue is pain.
Okay.
Is can they think differently in that moment? Mm-hmm. Can they breathe differently in that moment? Can they move differently in the moment? Or can they name the emotion behind it? Now, when someone's in pain, Betsy, it's a bit like if the head's in the lion's mouth and you're tapping them saying, oh, just calm down, it's okay. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Just breathe. Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
Your children have been screaming, crying. And if you sat to them and said, this is fine, you're going to be okay, and you walked away, it wouldn't happen.
Right.
If you said, right, take some deep breaths, that might be enough to start the process. But unless you tell them to move their arm, say, come and move your arm for mummy, you need to find your way in with who that person is. If someone's sobbing, you're checking there's nothing physical. You're saying, who's upset you? You're going for the emotional. And then you might say, oh, well, let's say a girlfriend broke up with me when I was a kid. Didn't happen very often, but if it did,
hypothetically,
you
had a friend.
My mum would say, "Oh, you're better than them. There's more fish in the sea."
Yeah.
And I never liked her anyway.
Yeah.
Now, if that happened again in the future, and I feel the pain of that, I deal with that, I express the emotion of that, and saying, "Well, I never liked her anyway. I'm better than her." And there's more fish. So it depends whether you think, breathe, move, or feel. You've got to start where you feel comfortable. So when someone's in pain, yes, then they can apply these strategies, but when you're learning them, you learn them in the safest place possible. And that's about setting a boundary for that person. They'll say, pain, Drew, I've got pain all day long. I say, well, that's okay. 23 hours, 58 minutes. Do be that. All I want is 2 minutes, and you're going to breathe as you run the bath. You're going to lay on the bed in pain. You're just going to breathe for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're going to reward yourself as you do it. Reward yourself. And well done, Betsy. Well done, Betsy. And you're going to, so the brain then sees the bath tap. It knows that what's coming next could be something pleasurable, but it isn't. Overloading to the organism, so there's an inherent desire for you to do it. As soon as you reward yourself, yes, Betsy, well done, that triggers the dopamine release for something that is non-destructive.
Yes. Okay.
So the next time you run the bath, the brain anticipates what's coming next and starts to release dopamine before you've done the activity. It starts to compel you to do the non-destructive behavior.
Okay.
Once you see the effect of that, wow, it starts to feel liberated. Now the change, if you get the right one for people, the right fear that's disappeared, the rest fall into place. As soon as I'm not scared, my arms dropped down.
Mhm.
You asked me how I feel better. And all you said to me, Drew, is there's no such thing as boogeyman.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if it depends, doesn't it? It depends how we connect. I like to move. I like to think. I love the breathing. I don't like the emotional stuff. But that's just me. I'm tapping into this because I have to say to patients, look, this might be a better starting point for you than for me. But if you can learn, I have a patient who drive from Middlesbrough to London, and you get back pain, leg pain all the way there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've spent £30,000, Drew. That's about $40,000 over the last 16 years. And chasing the physical resolution of it. And he said, I can't get it. I've tried everything. And what you're saying sounds right, but how can it be? You're sure there's nothing physical? And I said, well, yeah, there's a physical element, but can you see it's your frustration? Yeah. Yes. So now as he's driving to London, as the pain comes on, he slaps his leg and says, that's my frustration. The pain goes away.
Yeah,
the pain disappears.
Yeah.
Because he names the emotion.
Yeah.
He names the emotion, and he now laughs. He laughs where he used to cry. And once you laugh where you used to cry, you're attaching a different emotion to the same cue. Cues will always be there, Betsy. There'll always be a pub to walk past for an alcoholic. There'll always be a chocolate biscuit tin for those of us that really feel compelled to have a chocolate biscuit when we shouldn't. As soon as you see the cue, you start to put your hand in when your conscious mind saying, don't do it. And if you offer your brain a choice to say, it could feel better just to do this instead, that moment of choice is the route out of the cycle.
Okay. This sounds a lot like Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, where he talks about tiny changes.
Exactly that.
And then a reward.
Well, I read his book as part of the behavior science and Atomic Habits. And Atomic Habits, he is a student of BJ Fogg, actually.
Oh, okay.
And Charles Duhigg, which is another habit book, The Power of Habit by, they all say the same stuff.
Same thing, okay.
And BJ Fogg kind of says emotion is the thing that creates habits, not repetition.
So having an emotion that you're feeling on purpose, like a powerful emotion.
Yes. And if it's so powerful, that's the epiphany that changes it in immediate. Yeah. Because it's the opposite emotion to one was attached. So if it's not that exciting, this breathing or this new movement or this new expression of emotion or these new thoughts, you have to reward the brain each time you use that neural pathway.
And just saying, good job, that can do it. You can just congratulate yourself.
Say name in the third person, well done, Betsy. Well done, Drew. That's amazing, Drew. You did it in your head. 7 to 10 reps is BJ Fogg's kind of predict or sort of work. But if you can invest the emotional intensity in it, it's almost because I used to play football, I could double fist and go, yes, get in there, and it wires so quickly. It wires so quickly like that. But if you can get someone to breathe, that feels so nice. Or if you give us some momentary relief of pain. So if I did a small movement like lumbar rotations or knee rolls, if they're laid on the back, and I'll get the patient to tell me about the children's names and the grandchildren and what they're doing in the summer. So I'm getting to move in a way that's towards the area of danger, but in a very small range. But you start to attach pleasant thoughts to that movement without them realizing. It's not overtly manipulating them because they're happy for you to do the movement. But then you say, tell me about your holidays coming up. Tell me about the best holiday in your life.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Tell you about the best holiday in your life, and you start to move them in a way that was, and they've already saw the breathing, and then say, just show me that range again. And it starts to change immediately.
Amazing.
So once you show them a change, I say, well, nothing's healed in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
The structure.
Yeah, if anything, you would think it would get worse
Exactly.
yeah.
And there's lots of analogies that you and I use to say, well, that doesn't make sense. And there was no trauma. And how was you paying this much after 6 months when you just bent over to pick up a sock? There's loads of analogies like that. But the habit formation for someone who's very driven is sometimes start without pain. In BJ Fogg's book, he says, put your feet on the floor and say, today's going to be an amazing day. Today is going to be an amazing day. And I've got some patients who just started like that.
Yeah.
And in the book, he says because he's not trained in that, he says he doesn't know if it work with kind of medical situations, but I know it does. And it's from that I thought, oh gosh, you can apply this in the medical setting if you can thoroughly examine someone and know that the structural basis of the pain is relevant, but not a driver for persistent pain. You can explain that confidently and calmly in a reassuring way.
Yes.
And that might help with the beliefs. You don't have to go into the neuroscience. Pain neuroscience education has its place for those that need to know it, but it's the wrong level for a lot of people. And that's why the results for that are varied. Everyone can breathe for 2 minutes, independent of what level of pain they're in. And because they're breathing anyway. So can they slow their breathing? Yes. And can they be coached? Yes. So that could be a start. Can someone move in some way? Yes. And if they can't, imagine a movement 7 to 10 times.
Yes.
Imagine it. And that's all the graded imagery. There's lots of research for that and graded motor imagery. So start with that. And if they can't start there, start with emotion. Somatic tracking is another technique. Alan Gordon, I'm sure you're aware of, and Georgie Oldfield, who has the SERPA in the UK. There's some lovely audios with that. So many places to start. And you only have to see the tiniest little bit of success. And then if they see that, then I can't follow them round. Neither can you. They have to feel compelled or the impulse to do it again at a time of the day that's safe, in an environment that may not be safe or stressful, but they have to find that moment. And once they can develop that, then they can start to put the head closer in the lion's mouth if it still exists. And a lot of the times it doesn't exist because it's the past, and it doesn't exist because it's the future. And if they can deal with any current stressors, and if pain was the main one, and they start to deal with that, their life comes back.
Yes. What a beautiful thing. Well, I'd love to hear how you're working with patients now, and if people want to get a hold of you and your book, how do they find you?
The book's on Amazon, and it's an ebook, paperback, and an audiobook. I'm just a small town physio in the northeast of England. I'm starting to do some online work. It is only open to the UK and European clients just for insurance purposes, I'm afraid. But there's loads of people all over, and you're someone that I'm sure you can help with people your side of the pond. Betsy, I've seen all your stuff, and the content's it's the same as mine. It's a different spin on it. It's really spreading the word that people can recover from persistent pain. They can keep the origin of that story as a memory. They can keep the scars from it and celebrate them as a life lived. And maybe if it was an unfortunate experience that brought that, well, maybe something to be learned from, but they don't have to keep the pain for the rest of their life. And that isn't something that's easy to believe, and it isn't always an easy journey, but to step through the fear or step through the pain in a way that's gentle and not forcing the organism to accept that change is so much worth it. Because what's on the other side is it's wonderful to see.
That is such a beautiful process. It sounds like, I think sometimes people are resistant to having to get into all the emotions and having to, they have so much fear about how hard it's going to be and how painful, but it really sounds beautiful the way you describe, it's kind of it's individualized to the person and what they're needing in the moment, and kind of going in whichever door
is, kind of most accessible.
Yeah, and I think I don't always think you have to look backwards to go forward. My dad told me, and I remember this, he died a couple of years ago, but he said to me, son, the only thing you get from looking back is a stiff neck. And I think it's, you can acknowledge the past, and you can do some work going back over if you want, but you don't have to with this process. You just start the behaviors, acknowledge them, change the behaviors now, and deal with the current stresses in the best way you can. And I don't know if you did the Howard Schubiner course a few months ago. Yeah, and he's such a compassionate man, far more than I ever thought I could be. And I think I'm not bad, but when I listened to him, I thought, wow, what a wise man. And he said something within that course that just kind of makes me pause sometimes in my excitement to help people. He says, we've got to meet them where they're at, which is a kind of common statement. But he finished it and he said, and we've got to love them anyway. Got to love them anyway, whether we believe what we say out the door, we've still got to love them. I thought, wow. Otherwise, we just get frustrated because they're not believing what we say. But if you can love them and say, well, it's okay. If you're not ready, you're not ready. And you don't even have to say that. It's not for us to judge whether someone's ready or not. And so that compassionate view that he had, I thought, reserve your excitement, write it all, spread what the word you can in the way you spread it, and let other people investigate these mechanisms so that maybe the science supports them even more in the future. But for now, I think we've got enough to run with.
Right.
And it's an exciting journey to be on. And I think it'll allow you and me, hopefully, to prevent ever entering the persistent pain cycle again, or if never, not at all. But and it's nice to help others maybe reverse it for their experience.
Yeah, it's such a message of hope, I think, for people who haven't had a lot to be hopeful about maybe for years. So it is amazing what giving them the permission to believe something different can do in changing the results in their life.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift, and it's nice for the patients to do it. And over the time, colleagues of yours and mine and the wider medical community, this message will kind of spread, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. So great talking to you. I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned so much from you. So we'll keep in touch, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy. I'm going to make sure I keep following your content because I love it.
Likewise.
I did my first reel yesterday. I thought, I'm going to have a go at that because I've watched a lot of yours. They're fun.
They are fun, right? And it's a fun way to present information with music and, in a different way than just reading a paragraph.
Yeah, actually, it is. It's more interactive, and people, your personality comes across in that, and you're very likable and affable, and you can see you want to help people, and that straight away, you don't have to say anything. It just comes across, doesn't it? And I'm sure that'll attract clients to come and get the help they can off you. So yeah, you've inspired me. Well,
great. I'm glad to hear that. Likewise, you've inspired me so much as well. So great work. Keep it up.
Okay, thanks, Betsy.
All right. Take care. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a little bit about your brain today that helps you in your life like it helped me. Please be sure and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, be sure and share this podcast with someone you know that wants an unstoppable body and mind.